What about this?
Just keep going. It's recording already, I think.
Oh, is it? Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's recording the whole time. Just,
Okay.
Yep, the audience is here-ish.
Okay. Hello. My name is Darrel Howell, and this is my story. In trying to describe myself, I found a couple of references helpful. In her website post, Chelsea Vowell discussed the various options for naming non-Indigenous people living in Canada who form the European-descended socio-political majority. Quite a mouthful. She concluded that the best term is settler. She makes a compelling argument, but it does not really sit well with me. I think the term is divisive and doesn't describe how I feel. I had an aha moment a while back when it occurred to me that my vision of the Holy Spirit, or God, or whatever you want to call he, she, or they, was closer to the Indigenous belief that the Spirit is everywhere than traditional Christian beliefs. I know this does not make me Indigenous, but it does indicate some brotherhood, I hope. As I go through my story today, I'm going to make some references regarding my understanding of Indigenous culture and beliefs. I had never really thought much about my name. I learned it should not be taken for granted, however, when I listened to two Onion Lake Cree elders, Leonard Fox and Howard Whitmore. They described the 8 years that they had each spent in residential school in Onion Lake when they lost both their Cree and Christian names and were referred to only as number 4 and number 6. So, the best description I have of myself is a privileged white male. I'm also a husband, a father, a friend, and an engineer. I also like to think of myself as a musician. You'll get the opportunity to judge that shortly. In fact, right away. I'm going to start with a song that I wrote last year called Vulcan. I was born in Vulcan, of all places, way out in the wide open spaces. Life was hard, it wasn't really. A silver spoon was me completely. I wondered what life would deal me. Smarter, cooler kids all around us. Bobby said you should do engineering. Seemed like a dumb idea, but it was genius. Here I am, an Oilsands warrior, far from our central corridor. We have been true, and we have striven to care for all we have been given. My folks, they did not have much. Miners, storekeepers, farmers and such. They carved a new life in this land, beyond what they could comprehend. Neil Young, Corb Lund, they sure can sing well. spirits are good, but their thoughts are, well, some thoughts for the folks they are a part of might change the causes they sing of. Here I am, an Oilsands warrior, far from our central corridor. We have been true, we have striven to care for all we have been given, to care for all we have been given. So there we go. That was Vulcan, 3 chords and a sad song, but that's what country and western people always say. So anyway, for the next part of my story, I'm going to use a graph called the D-Ho story arc. Engineers do love graphs, you know. Horizontal axis here is time. The vertical axis is something I have called the D-Ho index. So yeah, that's kind of an indication of how I'm feeling about myself and things in general over a period of time. D-Ho was a nickname I picked up playing the ukulele to take off on Don Ho, the great Hawaiian musician, and Darrel Howell, my name, so D-Ho, yeah. Anyway, you can see from the graph, my life started in a small southern Alberta community called Armada. So right up here. You already know from the song that I was born in Vulcan, which was a bigger community nearby that had a hospital. I had a pretty idyllic life in Armada. I suppose I was the smartest kid around, so I'm told. Skipped 3rd grade, which was popular in those days. Spent summers barefoot and shirtless. I can remember my feet hurting from my unfamiliar shoes on the first day of school in the fall. My parents operated a general store in Armada. My dad worked so hard to make a living. In addition to the store, he was the postmaster, a lineman for the county, Glenn Campbell, drove a school bus, did electrical work, played in a country orchestra, and did seasonal farm work. In spite of my parents' efforts, the shift of business to larger centers did them in, and we moved to Calgary when I was 10 years old. So here's the biggest drop, I guess, on the graph. I went from having 3 students in my grade to 30. I went to Sonalta Elementary School, an imposing sandstone structure on a hill in the community of Scarborough. I was overwhelmed for quite some time, but gradually regained some confidence. The process continued at Central High School and the U of A, and then really continued to accelerate upwards until I went to work for Syncrude. University, I really wondered whether I had made the right career choice. After a few months working as an engineer, I knew the choice was genius, as I sang earlier. It was at Syncrude that I began my career as an oil sands warrior. My industry is arguably the most environmentally responsible in the world, and yet we continue to be demonized, even by our own federal government. I don't want this story to turn into a political rant, so I will just leave it at that and the song, I guess. I had an early experience at Syncrude that shaped the rest of my career. I was put into a position I really wasn't qualified for, building and running an extraction pilot plant in the Syncrude Research Department. Fortunately, we had a bunch of skilled tradesmen and operators that really did know what they were doing. So I started leading that operation, we would have morning review meetings. They'd go something like this. I would ask, so what went wrong last night? And they would tell me. And then I would ask, so what should we do about it to fix it? And they would tell me. And then I would say, well, let's go do that. So anyway, today we have a fancy name for that called servant leadership. It is based on the principle that you can usually learn more by listening than by trying to impose your higher education on someone. I think this is also consistent with many Indigenous stories and beliefs. It has certainly served me well. During this high period up here, we had two beautiful children, son Lindsay and daughter Jana. I think somehow I missed out getting married to Liz on the upswing there, which that happened as well. Anyway, we married in graduate school while she was completing her medical laboratory science degree. Anyway, so she was essential to actually having these two beautiful children. And my son Lindsay, my daughter Jana. My career eventually took me back to Calgary. I was working on the upgrader project with Husky when it was suddenly canceled. This led to a move to refinery manager in Lloydminster. We became fully immersed in the community, including joining Grace United Church. Life was good, maybe too good. As my son said, you were kind of a big deal, Dad. So I was the first manager of the upgrader. The plant ran beautifully, but the economics were bad. An upgrader depends on the differential between heavy crude price and the price of the final refined products. This differential was only about $3 per barrel when we started up, so it was impossible to make money. So the search for scapegoats was on, and I was one of them. Yeah, boom. I was suddenly unemployed with two kids still in school. It was a tough time, but also a time of self-discovery. I found that there was more to me than the position I held in life. I also found that forgiveness is necessary to move forward. I didn't think about it at the time, but I believe this is also consistent with Indigenous culture and teaching. I got through a few tough years with a lot of help from friends and family. I eventually went to work with a lovely man named Richard Klinger. Richard eventually sold his company, and I continued with Flint, the new owner. I would say this experience was okay, but I longed for the atmosphere of a small, dynamic company. So yeah, we're climbing back up the curve here, for those of you that love graphs. I got that chance when I was hired by Tartan Canada as president. I took the job in part as an experiment. Wanted to see if you could be successful in business without being an asshole. Oh, I meant to say jerk there, sorry. Turned out well and was a great way to end my career. Was certainly successful. The jerk part, I guess, is still open to debate. Throughout my career, I'd convinced myself I didn't have time for music. When I was little, I sang occasionally with my dad's band, apparently. I don't know if I can remember this. I've just been told so many times that I think I remember it, but Tennessee Waltz was apparently one of my specialties, so I have to play that again one of these days. I also played the accordion a bit. Back then, other kids threw rocks at you if you played the accordion. So I took about a 50-year break before discovering the ukulele, which you got to experience a little earlier. Our group plays several times a year, often in senior lodges, but open mics and whatnot else. Also, I also take voice lessons, sing in the choir, and play pretty bad handbells. So we're up here on the retirement line here. As you can see, this line is a bit lower than the highs earlier, but I think it's a sustainable part. It's a big step, retirement. I have stayed busy, probably too busy, with some early consulting and the boards of Lakeland College, Lloydminster Region Health Foundation, and Grace United Church. Most of these things are largely wound down. It appears that I may now be transitioning into a student. My friend, classmate, and ukulele partner, Adrian, was also helping me with this video. Thank you, Adrian. Convinced me to take Music 100 at Lakeland last year. I enjoyed it a lot, so I'm trying 2 more courses this year. I enjoyed being an engineer a lot, but not really enjoy being an engineering student. It was pretty dry. I'm looking forward to some ongoing exposure to the humanities. Hard for an engineer to say that, but I've done it, yeah. So, in wrapping up, I've had a blessed life, a couple of rough spots, but by and large, a life of privilege. This course, Indigenous Storytelling, has given me a different perspective for reflecting on who I am. Thank you so much for listening. Yeah, I left out the music part the first time.